Hi, hello everybody. Okay, good evening and welcome to the Centre for Jewish History. I'm Rio Daniel, CEO of the Centre, and it's an honour to have you all here tonight. First, I'd like to extend our deepest gratitude to the Claims Conference, whose incredible support makes films like The Boy in the Woods possible. We are grateful for their tireless effort and work to secure material compensation for Holocaust survivors around the world and to preserve their stories for future generations. I also want, Thank you, Gideon. I also want to thank Rebecca Snow, the film's director, for her remarkable work, and Annette Insdorf, our moderator, for leading tonight's discussion. It's also quite exciting to have the immensely talented Richard Armitage with us. Above all, we are profoundly grateful to Maxwell Smart for his bravery in sharing his story. Your courage in bringing history to life is invaluable. Thank you for flying from Montreal to join us here today. At the Centre for Jewish History, our mission is to preserve stories like Maxwell's and to mobilize these narratives to meet the challenges of today. The Centre is home to the largest Jewish archive in the United States and second only to the National Library of Israel worldwide, with collections spanning 3,000 years. In fact, we have 10 stories of archives above your heads. We collaborate with our 5 partner institutions, the American Jewish Historical Society, the American Sephardi Federation, the Leo Baeck Institute, Yeshiva University Museum, and YIVO Institute for Jewish Research to document and share this vast history. Now more than ever, these stories are vital, and we are committed to ensuring that they continue to inspire and educate. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Gideon Taylor, President of the Claims Conference. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Good evening. So I have the honor to represent the Claims Conference, which has worked for over 70 years to secure compensation and restitution for Holocaust survivors around the world. In addition, the Claims Conference is one of the largest global funders of Holocaust education. We have long supported organizations, institutions, perpetuating the memory of the Shoah, including film and film production. Film reaches us differently than books or documents. Films touch our minds and our hearts in a different way. They can put us into a moment that we might never otherwise be able to visualize. Holocaust films are not just telling a story. They're a testimony of voices that might otherwise be lost. Collectively, they become an archive that will remind future generations of what happened. We are proud to have played a small role in the development of the Boy in the Woods. It is beautiful in its storytelling and poignant as a cautionary tale of brutal hatred and personal strength. What a blessing it is for us all tonight to be able to be with Max. Max, you not only teach us, you inspire us. With the remarkable talent of Rebecca, Richard, as well as so many others, in the decades to come, you will be one of the survivors from whom children and young people and generations still to be born will learn about the Shoah. Through this powerful film, your story will be one from which they can learn about the place to which unchecked hate can bring society. While this film reminds us of one of the darkest times in history, your personal story, Max, shows us that even in those dark times, there are those whose personal strength and resilience can bring back the light. With that, I would like to thank the Center for Jewish History for hosting this screening, for all the work it does in educating, in maintaining the history, and teaching future generations. And I'd like to introduce the brilliant writer and director who brought Max's story of survival to life, Rebecca Snow.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Gideon. Just a quick thank you all for coming so very much. The Claims Conference have been so supportive of this film and the documentary I made before this film, which is how I discovered Max's story. I want to quickly mention Barbara Gamashi, who's here in the audience, who's been incredibly supportive, and Abigail Prade, who's not here. As a director and a writer, they have been incredibly amazing to work with, so thank you so much. Thank you to the Center for Jewish History for having us here. It's so incredible to be showing this film here. And it's very special tonight because, of course, Richard Armitage, who plays Jasko, is here, which is amazing. And Max is here. The boy in the woods himself is here. I'd like him to stand up, actually. Max, would you stand? And it's very, very special because Richard and Max, this is the first night they're actually meeting in person. Amazingly, when Max came to set, Richard wasn't there, and we filmed the film in Canada. So Richard was up in the sort of woods of Canada, and Max was there just a week before him. So it's amazing to see them together. It's amazing for me personally to see them together, meeting finally. And enjoy the film, and we'll all be, Richard, Max, and myself will be up to have a discussion afterwards. Any questions we can answer. So thank you again.
Please welcome to the stage Maxwell Smart. Rebecca Snow, writer and director. Richard Armitage, actor, and Annette Insdorf, who's moderating tonight's conversation. She hosts Real Pieces at 92nd Street Y. Thanks so much for being here.
It's an honor to be part of this evening. I saw the film about 2 months ago, and while watching the so-called fiction film, I was compelled enough. But that epilogue, and I heard some of you in the audience, that epilogue where we actually see the real Maxwell Smart in Israel in 2019, finding Tova, the infant that he saved, that just cuts to the heart. And it leads to my first question for Rebecca Snow. And this is her first feature fiction film, if I understand correctly. And I gather that the documentary footage at the very end is from a documentary that you directed, Cheating Hitler. The full title is Surviving the Holocaust. Could you talk a little about how your first fiction film, The Boy in the Woods, originated in that documentary and the process of bringing it into, quote, fiction?
Yeah, so I made Cheating Hitler, Surviving the Holocaust in 2019 for History Channel Canada. Very unfortunate, it hasn't yet got a broadcaster in the US. We've been waiting since 2019. I'm sure at some point it will, but I'll inform everyone, it's the Center for Jewish History when it is, because it's a wonderful film. And Maxwell was one of 3 survivors that we feature in that documentary. And we take them back to some of the places, in many cases, that they hadn't been back to for, 75 years. And Max's story, Max was, when I first interviewed Max, it was for about 3 hours, I think, my first interview with Max. It was so very clear that his relationship with Yanek was so central to everything that he has tried to process since, that central friendship. And it was it became very clear to me while we were filming. We went to Yad Vashem together, we went to Israel, and then I went to Ukraine where all of this happened. And it was very clear to me that the documentary was just the beginning, that this had to be told in a sort of narrative, dramatic way. I didn't know at the time that I was going to be the one to make it. I was thinking, someone's got to make this film. We've got to get it out there. But then over the next few years, it just the story wouldn't leave me alone, or I couldn't leave it alone. And Max and I, Max very, very generously agreed that he would be willing to explore the idea of, because he has this wonderful memoir, The Boy in the Woods. I encourage everyone to read it because this is a small part of his incredible survival story. And so I took, I took Max's memoir and adapted it into a screenplay, and that was the beginning.
But you, I gather, made some changes, because the memoir, if I understand correctly, was originally From Chaos to Canvas. And there, for example, the scene of Yanek dying, he dies alone, if I remember correctly, and you have him in the arms of Max. And I wanted to ask about that, or you deleted how Max found a group of Jews that included the baby's aunt who reclaimed the child. They returned to their own hiding place, telling Max that they would return for him, but they never did. So just talk about the adaptation of that, how you felt you had to condense or enlarge.
Yeah, it's so difficult with so many of these stories. There's so many amazing things, and the thing about Max's story and his memoir, it almost reads like a movie script. It's just so dramatic, and there's so many incredible moments and twists and turns, and so the other thing about this story that I was so compelled by was it is a story about an orphan being cast out into the wilderness to fight the forces of evil. And that's the story, that's the sort of beginning of every Grimm's fairy tale, every Eastern European folk tale. So I went really down a sort of path of, reading about Yiddish folklore and trying to understand how this little boy who has been cast out into the wilderness, this place of great refuge, but also great danger and great mythology in Eastern Europe. The woods is this place of great mythology. How he's processing the trauma and the landscape around him. And that's what I was so interested in, especially because Max was a young budding artist. Maxwell now is an abstract expressionist artist. And so this was all stuff I wanted to explore with this film. So, but the core of it, the sort of key story is very, very sort of true to the memoir. There are little bits I had to do for sort of, production reasons. I had to sort of take out some characters, but it was very, very, it was so adaptable because it was such an incredible story.
And I do want to ask the hero of the evening, what made you trust Rebecca Snow? Because you were handing your life story to a young woman. What was it about her that you said, yep, I'm going to go with this?
Why did you trust me with the story, Matt? What was it that you wanted to trust me with the story?
Actually, it's a longer story than the question. Rebecca came to me, and I saw in Rebecca, with her staff, asking me questions about my past. I didn't want to go back to my past. The past was written off because it was horrible. It was horrible to remember. But she somehow convinced me to tell the story about the Holocaust. I fell into her. I trusted her. And the way she portrayed, not only that she produced Cheating Hitler, which became very popular, but she produced The Boy in the Woods in such a way that she brought me back not in misery to my past, but somehow in happiness and in accomplishment. She produced a film that not only tells the story about the Holocaust, but you feel the way she said the story. She portrayed the boy the way boys are. This film is not only for grown-ups, it is for children, that they could watch this movie and learn about the past, not in misery and not in turning away from it, because the past is horrible. The murder of 6 million people is a horrible thing, but somehow she portrayed it in such a way that it is possible to watch my sorrow story and not to be involved in death, study, and misery, and concentration camps, and beating. Somehow she showed it all in a nice children's way. That's what she did. And including Richard next to me.
Yeah, I'm about to go to Richard.
He is a genius, the way he played me. I love him.
I mean, I think Richard Armitage is probably best known in the United States as Thorin from Peter Jackson's trilogy of The Hobbit. And also, you're an accomplished theater actor in the UK. For example, nominated for the Olivier Award for starring in Arthur Miller's The Crucible at London's Old Vic. And you starred in the 3rd season of Hannibal, a year later in the Epix original series Berlin Station. Why am I saying all this? Because when I first saw the film, I assumed you were a Polish actor. I teach Polish cinema at Columbia University. And I thought, I haven't seen his face before. And then I realized, well, there's a good reason. He's an actor from the UK. He's not, doesn't. Could you talk, though, about your preparation to play Jasko?
There wasn't a huge amount of time, actually. I think there was maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks prep. Even less time shooting, maybe just a week on set. So quite fast. I worked with John Nellis on the dialect, but we got into some quite heated conversations about geography and history. My first port of call was to read Max's incredible book and then watch the documentary. So that was, to me, the source material. I was desperate to meet Max. I didn't until I got on set and we Zoomed electronically. This is our first meeting. But yeah, it was kind of straight in there. And actually, strangely enough, I don't remember any of the technical side of the film. I don't remember going through a costume fitting or sitting in a makeup chair. I just remember being with my feet on the grass and in that cabin. I think at one point I wanted to sleep and stay in the cabin. I was going to go full method. And then I felt the cold and saw the mice and decided the hotel was better. But it was a very intense experience. And yeah, I just have this lingering memory of Jett's face, and what an extraordinary bit of casting, because having seen you now in the flesh, I fully believe that Jett is the younger you. Yeah.
As long as you're raising this, how did you find the actor Jett Klyne who plays young Max?
Yeah, Jett's Canadian. He's from the west coast of Canada. A lot of the actors in this are Canadian, apart from Richard and a couple of others. So Jett, we put the calling out. Our casting director put out a call for tapes, and so I watched a bunch of tapes. And Jett's actually came in quite late to the batch of tapes, and I hadn't quite felt like I'd found my Max. I thought, my gosh, I'm going to have to go around to schools or something and see if I can find a Max. But then Jett's tape came in, and he was so incredibly naturalistic, and that fine line of little boy to little man, that as his mum says to him a lot. I thought, this is our Max, but I wanted to see him in the woods before I officially cast him. So I flew out to Vancouver, and we went out to Stanley Park, which is this gorgeous forest in Vancouver, and that's where we met for the first time. And he was jumping up on huge old trees and running around and exploring, and I thought, yeah, this is our Max. You know, he just moves so beautifully through the woods with so much curiosity and fun, you know. And he also has, his great grandmother was part of the Kindertransport out of Eastern Europe, so she ended up in the UK, and so he really felt, he told me, you know, he was 11 at the time that I cast him. He said, I really feel a duty to tell this story, you know, and his mum really felt like he was kind of made for this role, and, you know, once we got on set, I could see that he really was. So yeah, it was, he did such an incredible job.
When you mention his interaction in the woods that you wanted to see, I had such a strong sense of place. Bučac is the original setting, and I had assumed that maybe you, for example, as an actor, would go to Buchach just to get a feel for the landscape. And then I learned at the end credits that it was shot entirely in Ontario, right? So what a fantastic job of transposition and directing the landscape, so to speak, so that it felt so organic to the story that was being developed. For Maxwell, I wondered, what does it feel like for you to watch a fiction film acted by young people that tells your story? I mean, I gather that you are happy with it, that you're grateful for it, but was there that kind of out-of-body experience? I mean, is it always for you joy to watch the film, or is it pain too?
My feelings is I'm happy that the film was produced, shown, but my accomplishment in this film, my story itself, that it's being told and repeated and shown in movies, in movie houses, written about it in countries, it will be remembered as a story about the Holocaust, a different type of story, but still a story of misery and hatred by people who have nothing to do with it. Really, it is done by governments, instigated of hatred about a race of people. Even children felt the anger of the population, the anger of the world against a small group of people. And this in itself makes me feel accomplished, that I produce something to show it is not true what you think about me. I am a normal child like anybody else in the world. Why do you think? Why should you make me different? I am not different. I am the same type as anybody else, but I am made by governments different. Imagine just now the United Nations, 150 countries in the world say that I have no right to defend myself. Not one, but 150 United States of the United country. All the countries, the club of hatred. And this is what I would like to see changed in my life. In my life, which is very short.
I think we've all learned by now that reading newspapers, getting the news, and hearing statistics doesn't really change anyone's heart or mind. But when you tell one unique story, when an individual's face, name, history, body become part of your emotional landscape, there's a possibility for a sort of greater humanity, an extension, if you will. For Richard, because you have so much more experience in the world of fiction, filmmaking, and television as well, I wonder if you could compare what it was like to be directed by Rebecca Snow, though it was the first time, to, I mean, you've worked with Peter Jackson, of course, and you've worked with somebody that I've been close to for 35 years, Julie Delpy. This actress, screenwriter, director made a film called My Zoe a few years ago, and you played her husband, James. You scared me so much while I was watching the film because he's not a very nice man. And there were 2 times in the film where you were almost choking her, and I feared for her life, especially because I know the actress. But again, being directed by a female filmmaker, just, you know, what is it that Rebecca brought to the way you were directed?
It's always exciting when you're working with somebody that comes from documentary filmmaking, because very rarely do they impose something on the film. They're always looking to discover something that's happening in the moment. And I really felt that with Rebecca from the very beginning, and particularly with the way that she guided Jett through the story. She was nurturing him rather than sort of pushing him to perform, which and the same for me. She was, and I think that's. I think you approached the documentary in a similar way. It was more like an archaeologist, kind of pulling back the earth, looking to see what was there, rather than forcing a dramatic narrative, because a story like this doesn't need dramatizing. It's already dramatic. And so you enter a story like that with the feeling of, I don't need to perform, I just need to feel this. I just need, and when you're taking on the responsibility of somebody's true life story, there's weight that you carry. And I think we all felt it. And I just think there's an honesty to it. The other thing that I really love is the fact that a lot of the film was captured. So what looks like extraordinary, well, millions and millions of dollars on the screen, like the sort of frost flare that, you know, when the gutting of the pig and the sunsets and the sunrises, they're all because you looked at the weather and went, and called me and went, can you come to set early because the sun's going to rise and the frost is on the ground? And I was like, yep, let's go. That's guerrilla filmmaking, and it's amazing. It's what you got on screen for the budget you had is unbelievable. So I was up for it.
Before I forget to mention, you know, you've all just seen and heard it in this amazing space. The sound here is incredible. The composer of the film, Julia Kent, is here, and I want to mention her because every Julia's up there. Yeah, here she is. I feel so lucky to have worked with Julia on this film. Every time we screen it, we get people commenting on the incredible score. So I think it just is so beautiful, Julia. I'm so glad you're here.
I've seen, I don't know, maybe 1,000 films about the Holocaust. I wrote the book Indelible Shadows, Film in the Holocaust, and had to keep updating it from 1983 into the 1990s, and then 2002 was the last one. And one of my bones that I pick often with Holocaust films is that the score is often too sentimental. It kind of pushes you to cry with the violins as opposed to letting your emotions enter. And I didn't feel that here. I was grateful that the score was lyrical without being manipulative. And though it's not part of the score, I must say at the end, I love that. It sounded like a tango, da 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 da. And I thought, is this Leonard Cohen? Because it had that wonderful tone. And then I realized, no, it's Daniel Kahn and the Painted Bird Orchestra. I was curious. He didn't write this for the film. This is something that he did write? No.
He didn't, amazingly, and it's a song called The Children in the Woods. And I was going through, I really wanted a sort of modern Yiddish sound to the, you know, sort of folkish instrumentation. And so I started listening to all these different artists, and Daniel Kahn really struck me. And I saw on one of his albums there's a song called The Children in the Woods. I was like, I can't, can I? I mean, that's just too on the nose. But it's just such a beautiful song. And the lyrics, when you actually listen to it, it's so, I mean, it's so powerful. And so I called him and said, would you consider, and he said, absolutely, you know, and he heard about Max's story. I told him about the film, and he was incredibly, you know, generous with his music. So I was so happy to have that in the credits there.
It's a wonderful end sonically to the rest of the film. Now, for Maxwell, I saw that you were credited as executive producer. So presumably you were involved in the process of making the film. But I gather you were not on the set because you didn't meet on the set. Over the course of making the film, what kind of input did you have? Did you ever say to Rebecca, you know, it wasn't really quite like this? Or did you ask her maybe to change something? Or were you basically just supporting her?
She's asking how much input you had on the producing of the film, the writing and that kind of thing. Did you tell me things that were different, or did you trust me just to write the script? How much input did you have?
I hope I had quite a bit of input. The way you produce this film. But I think my story is more simple. You made it into something of value. You produced it. I gave you a story which was written 10 years ago to the Azrieli Foundation for stories to preserve the Holocaust. The second book was repaired for HarperCollins because the baby was found. So my story is just a regular story, but you took this story and you made it into a powerful, not only a story, but a powerful movement, a powerful expression of what really happened and what really, how bad it was. Because watching this movie, an innocent boy's movie, put in so much feeling that people, every person is involved in it. Not only people around this country, Poland is involved with it, Russia is involved with it, Yugoslavia is involved with it, Spain is involved with it. Every country in the world is involved in this story. You produce a powerful expression, a different expression about the Holocaust.
He did come to set. Do you want to? Remember you came to set.
I went. The story about the set was a very powerful story to me. When I came to the set and I saw Jett, I didn't see a boy playing me. I saw the surrounding of the woods. It brought me back to what happened to me when I was his age. And I see this little boy Jett running towards me. I didn't see Jett. I saw Yanek. And when I saw Yanek, I must say, 94-year-old man, I started to cry. Not only I cried, the whole staff cried. Yanek cried. It took a half an hour to calm down everybody. Such a feeling. I lived back my youth in a happy surrounding. It is a different feeling of being happy and living back. Somehow, even in my book I write, those two cannot be together. Hatred does not live good with happiness. But I was happy about a hatred that committed such tremendous crimes. And this is what you produced. And I'm grateful to you.
In a moment, we're going to take questions from the audience. I had one more because from what I gather, while this film was made with great harmony and joy, there are constraints like budget and shooting in a certain place where you may or may not get exactly what you need. First, I wanted to ask Richard and then Rebecca, what was the greatest challenge you felt in making this film? I mean, accent?
I think the greatest challenge is actually after the making of the film is praying that a distributor will get hold of the film and put it in cinemas to have it seen, because that's all you want. You want people to come to this story. I'd like this film to be seen in Europe. We'd like this film to be seen in Poland. So that's the greatest challenge, I think.
People tell you, don't make your first film with animals, babies, and children. So that was a bit of a challenge. And, we had lots of babies in the film and lots of animals and obviously the kids. So that was a big challenge. I mean, that river crossing scene was a big challenge, practicality-wise. We had wonderful stunt doubles, these two wonderful women who stunted doubled as the boys, and you do all sorts of amazing tricks like that in film. And then I would say, generally, the big challenge for me from the documentary to making this film was the emotional toil of it all. It's really it's just a very hard subject matter to be dealing with. I've got young children. I'm a mum, and it was very, very difficult. And obviously, I spent hours with Max, and I felt a huge duty. And Richard just mentioned you feel a real responsibility when you're telling someone's true story. And all I wanted was to do Max justice and the people around him that didn't survive. Yanek, to know that everyone in this room now knows Yanek's story and Yanek's name and might go out and tell people his story, and then that might spread. And Yanek, who could have been forgotten if it weren't for Max, will be remembered forever. That is carrying the weight of all of that. But then moments like this where there are audiences, and we played wonderful film festivals and had huge audiences, and it's so rewarding. So it all pays off.
Actually, speaking of that, I noticed in the end credits this time, Paramount Plus. Does that mean that it might be shown?
In Canada, it's currently streaming on Paramount Plus.
And the United States?
Not sure yet. So the film does come out on video on demand. You can get it on your TVs as of Tuesday, the 24th. So in a couple days. So you guys have a nice sneak peek, and please tell people about it. But yeah, it's going to be available on Google Play and Apple TV and all that stuff on demand. You can rent it or buy it. But a streamer hopefully in the future in the US. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We can take a few questions from the audience. And is there a microphone? Oh, Gabriel, perfect. The first one I saw is I'm sorry, there's a gentleman right there on the aisle. And then there's someone on the aisle here. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I think there was something in the water in Bachach to produce such great artists. As you must know, the great Shai Agnon, the Nobel Prize laureate, is from Bachach. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet him?
This is for Max, right?
Yes.
Max, did you ever have an opportunity to meet the great author? Remind me, I'm sorry, his... Shai Agnon. Oh, yeah, Agnon. Did you ever meet Agnon from Bachach, the writer?
No, I did not meet him. But I do have from Agnon his book that he sent me, quite a lot of it. He writes about it. He writes exactly in this book, thinks about my family. He does. His research is unbelievable. He did a lot of research. He writes about my auntie. He writes about my family. My family was quite prominent. From my little city, going off the story that you're asking me, my city was 8,000 Jewish people lived there, quite prominent people of Bachach, the city of Bachach. And we are very charitable family. We were well off. We supported a lot of charitable organizations. None of them from 8,000 people. My own family is 62 people. We always lived in the city. Nobody even moved to any other country in the world. When I was left single, alone, without anybody knowing me, anybody who could say that I am a son of this and this guy. Nobody, not even. My auntie survived, and I found her 20 years later. To a chance from a barber. He came to me and he told me my auntie is alive. So my life is completely wiped out. I had no life. I had to start from the beginning of me and produce me. Now, how could I make my life livable? I don't know who I am. Nobody knows me. Nobody wants to know me. When I came to Canada, Holocaust was taboo. There was not only Canada, any place a survivor of the Holocaust came, he was not received as a human being. He was received, especially me. They didn't even know, am I Jewish? Am I not Jewish? Who am I? What am I saying? Am I true? Is it true? Is it? It was impossible to connect with any living Jewish family. And they came to pick me up. I came. I am grateful to the Congress, the Jewish Congress, because the Jewish Congress brought me over. They brought me over you wouldn't believe it. They put me on, not in school. They didn't bring me as a child. They brought me over to help me place myself somewhere. But they did have a responsibility by bringing me over. No, they put me in to be a shipper. I was making $18 a week. I'm self-supporting, and they wrote in the book, we cannot help you, you're self-supporting from now on, and that's it. And they wrote me off that I don't exist. I had to go back to my family by myself and figure, who am I? And I brought back my father to life, my mother, my family, my grandfather, and I brought them all back to life. And I made myself who I am from memory, and I rebuilt my life.
I have two questions for the three of you. The first one is for Rebecca Snow and Richard Armitage. When I was watching the movie, I was thinking about this question, like in the middle of the film. Which movies or audiovisual text, generally speaking, influenced you, inspired you, in a sense, from the directing and the acting point of view? And to Maxwell Smart, I wanted to ask you, it was just a curiosity, but I was wondering how this experience influenced your art, because at the end, you showed actually 4 pictures of you, and so I was wondering how hard this experience influenced you. Thank you.
Do you want to go ahead, Richard, with that?
Which movies inspired me?
Or text.
Or audiovisual texts.
Gosh, it's a good. I took no more or less inspiration than from Max's autobiography. I think that was everything. What I found the most inspiring was the fact that this story and the script really just felt like a small slice of a life that became huge, and actually. The inspiration I've taken from working on it is that you made something so enormous out of your life, and whenever I have a rubbish day, I just think, nothing is that bad. Look at what this man did with the rest of his life. Look at him sitting here and all of the achievements he made. So that was the inspiration that I took from all of this.
Yeah, in terms of sort of film inspiration for me, I watched a lot of incredible war films. I mean, one of my favorites is Come and See, very hard hitting, and you'll notice in the dreams, he's looking straight to camera, and I really took inspiration from Come and See for that. It's an amazing film, if anyone has seen it.
I show it in my class every single year. It was made in Russia in 1985. It's one of the most harrowing anti-war films I've ever seen, the most brilliantly constructed, and it's about a boy. It's about a young boy, not Jewish, who wants to join the partisans, and it's an amazing motion picture.
It's incredible. So that, and then just in terms of the landscape being a character, I love all of Terrence Malick's films. So and also just this kind of taking the time, spending the time to establish that character and that landscape, and I think also my documentary sense, I just wanted to kind of observe. I didn't want to have to always be filling the space with explanations or, dialogue and all that stuff. And then in terms of the script, when I was writing, as I mentioned, I took a lot of inspiration from Yiddish folklore and Max's paintings and that. And then, Max, you had a question for you about how your experience impacted your art.
You could say about me, I am a self-taught artist. I'm a self-taught writer. I'm a self-taught everything because I had nobody to help me, teach me. I had no money for schooling. I'm a self-taught, intelligent man. I went to school. I know languages. I know art. I think my art by itself, my art that I love so much, helped me survive the war, helped me survive till today. I still paint today, daily. I go out and paint. I am disconnected totally. I don't know, maybe I'm magical, or maybe I have some kind of, I don't know. I have the power to disconnect myself from reality and just involve myself in something and create it to a point that it becomes well-known and excellent in the world, and people love my art. I have 2 galleries in Canada. I have galleries in Florida, and I paint thousands of paintings for fun, but I sell them. I love painting. This is my favorite pastime, my favorite work is painting.
We're almost at the end of time, but I think I see a hand all the way back on the aisle. Is that correct? This, I think, will be the last question.
I want to thank you all. This was phenomenal. And I think what you just said, Max, I realized that was caught in the film, that you had something inside of you that comes through in the film. You loved art, and you had your family inside of you, your mother, the education, the intelligence. There's so much inside of you from the very early years of your life. And you bring it out in the film, and you live it through the rest of your life. You were able to go back and form and recapture your identity. You brought your early life alive, and you flourished, and I can feel the background you have within you as you speak tonight and as you show yourself in the movie. And I think it's a phenomenal example of what makes a human being capable of moving on, and not to forget the roots. The roots are in you. And I think that made a major difference. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous film. I really appreciate it. As a psychoanalyst, it was really a testimony to this kind of survival. Thank you so much. And it makes sense. Your art is wonderful. It makes sense perfectly.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to add that there is something magical about Maxwell Smart, about his art, about his life, and about the spark that he was able to provide to Rebecca Snow and Richard Armitage and the other actors. And we are the beneficiaries of that in our ability to not only see the film tonight, but to hear from these remarkable people. Thank you so much for joining us.